I took my ex ring shopping and a week later he married someone else. No fights, no tears, just silence. You'd think I'd break, right? But I didn't. I quietly erased every reminder of him, every trace of what I thought was our future. What's absurd is that while he rushed into a new life, I built mine from the ground up, brick by brick, without looking back. 8 years later, I'm the strategy director of the parent company that controls the very business his new wife runs. It's strange how life works. Sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to your greatest power. Let me tell you how that happened. Before we start, type 1 if you've ever dreamed of getting revenge but never got the chance. No judgment here. And hit that subscribe button. We don't let betrayals slide around here, not even from people who don't subscribe. Let's continue. My name is Marina Carter. I'm 38 now, living in Chicago, and for the last decade I've carved out a career that demands sharp instincts and calm under pressure. I'm the kind of woman who never liked shortcuts. Every achievement was earned, every challenge met head-on. I've always believed that success isn't handed to you, you have to take it quietly and relentlessly. Back when I was 30, I was engaged, or at least I thought I was. Jake was my boyfriend, charming and persuasive. He worked in marketing, full of big ideas and promises. We shared an apartment in Lincoln Park, spent weekends dreaming about a future together, talking about family, a home filled with laughter. I was ready to say yes to build a life with him. Little did I know that chapter was about to close faster than I could blink. While Jake was busy planning a life with me, fate had other plans. That twist in the story forced me to rewrite my entire narrative not as a heartbroken woman, but as someone who chose to rise smarter and stronger. And that's where my real journey begins. One crisp Saturday afternoon, Jake surprised me with what felt like the perfect day. He took me to a small jeweler's shop in downtown Chicago, one tucked away on a quiet street I'd never noticed before. The kind of place with soft lighting and velvet cushions, where the air smells faintly of hope and commitment. He pulled out a ring box, and for a moment, everything felt real, the future, the promises, the life we had planned. We spent the afternoon trying on rings, laughing at my indecisiveness and his insistence on the right one. I remember thinking, this is it. I was ready. But then, just a week later, my phone buzzed with a message that shattered everything. I married someone else. No calls, no explanations, just those 6 words that left my world upside down. I sat there staring at the screen, feeling everything except the tears everyone expected. That was the moment I realized this wasn't the end, it was the start of something else. Something I couldn't yet understand. After that message, I didn't explode. I didn't sob uncontrollably. Instead, I did something far more powerful. I quietly erased Jake from my life. No dramatic confrontations, no angry texts, just a steady, cold, clean sweep. I deleted his number, packed away the few things he left behind, and unsubscribed from every social media channel that reminded me of him. Even his dog Max, okay, maybe I kept Max. He was too cute to abandon. My best friend Della wasn't quite sure what to make of my silence. Over coffee one afternoon, she raised an eyebrow and said, you're like a secret agent wiping out all evidence of a crime scene. Aren't you going to at least rage text him? Or post something passive-aggressive on Instagram? I smiled, stirring my latte. Why waste my energy? Let him have his new life. I'm not starring in a soap opera here. Della laughed. Well, you're definitely not boring. That was the thing, no theatrics, no sob story. I told a few close friends the truth, but mostly I kept it to myself. Life had suddenly become a strange kind of satire. Here I was, the woman he'd taken ring shopping, now erased so thoroughly I might as well have been a ghost. Meanwhile, Jake was probably posting honeymoon selfies with his new bride, blissfully unaware I was quietly plotting a future where he'd be the footnote. Weeks passed and my life shifted gears. I buried myself in work, spending late nights at the marketing firm I'd recently joined. I refused to let anyone see me as the girl left at the altar, because frankly, I wasn't. I was the woman rewriting the rules. The woman who didn't need a ring or a man's approval to feel whole. One evening, my colleague and occasional nemesis, Tom, spotted me working late again. Hey Marina, ever think about taking a break? Go out, meet someone new. I smirked without looking up. Tom, if I wanted dating advice, I'd call someone whose romantic life isn't a disaster movie. He grinned. Fair enough, but just so you know, your quietly removing him strategy is working. You're basically the Houdini of heartbreak. I chuckled, but inside I felt something shift. The past was behind me, the future. That was mine to claim, on my terms, with or without Jake. And little did I know then, the twists waiting ahead would make that quiet erasure look like the prologue to a much bigger story. Breaking into the corporate world wasn't a romantic stroll down Michigan Avenue. If anything, it was a marathon sprint through a maze built for confusion, skepticism, and the occasional elbow to the ribs. After Jake disappeared from my life, I doubled down on my career. Marketing was my battlefield, but the real fight was earning respect in a room where smiles often masked silent, "Let's see if she breaks" bets. At 31, I landed a position at Zenith Solutions, a mid-sized firm with big ambitions and even bigger egos. From day one, I noticed how male executives sized me up, not for my ideas or experience, but for my resilience. I was the ambitious woman, a polite label for the unspoken, "Let's see how long she lasts." I remember my first board meeting like it was yesterday. The room was an ocean of dark suits and polished shoes, the air thick with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and unspoken challenges. I presented a campaign strategy designed to double our client engagement. Halfway through, Richard, the senior VP with a penchant for condescension, interrupted, "Marina, that's an interesting idea. But don't you think it's a bit optimistic? Our clients tend to prefer tried-and-true methods over flashy gimmicks." I smiled, steadying myself. "Richard, innovation is what keeps companies relevant. Sticking to the tried and true is a fast track to becoming irrelevant." There was a pause, then a few nods, but I could tell Richard wasn't convinced. Over the next few months, I faced more of these moments. Subtle dismissals, friendly advice that was anything but, and whispered doubts about whether I was too emotional or too ambitious. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wasn't the one getting married, then leaving fiancés for someone else. Then there was Alex, my closest ally and occasional partner in crime at Zenith. Alex was a sharp-witted analyst, slightly older, who'd seen the trenches before. One late evening, as we stayed back to prep for a major client pitch, he looked up from his laptop and said, "You know, Marina, people here don't just compete with you, they compete with the idea that a woman can be more than just nice." I laughed. "So basically, I'm fighting the good fight, armed with spreadsheets and a poker face." "Exactly," Alex grinned. "And by the way, your poker face could give any pro a run for their money." His support meant everything. With him, I could vent about the endless microaggressions and share ideas without worrying about being undermined. But even with allies, the path was riddled with obstacles. One memorable incident involved a client from a rival company, an ambitious startup called Meridian Media, run by a woman named Allison. Allison had a reputation for being tough, no-nonsense, and fiercely protective of her brand. When I was assigned to pitch Zenith's latest digital strategy to Meridian's board, I knew this would be no easy task. On the day of the pitch, I arrived early, the conference room humming with energy and skepticism. Allison entered with a sharp smile and a gaze that felt like it could cut through steel. "Marina Carter," she said, extending a hand. "I've heard a lot about you." I shook her hand firmly. "Allison, the feeling's mutual." The pitch began smoothly, but midway, Allison leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but our company isn't interested in drastic changes that might jeopardize our current success. Stability matters." I met her gaze. "I understand stability is important, but growth requires risk. It's about balancing the two, not choosing one over the other." The room fell quiet. Allison's eyes narrowed slightly, as if testing my resolve. After the meeting, she shook my hand again, but the warmth was gone. That was my introduction to the complicated dance of corporate power plays. Allison wasn't just a competitor. She was a gatekeeper, someone who held influence in a world I was just stepping into. But little did I know, our paths would cross far more intimately in the years to come. Back at Zenith, I faced another hurdle: internal politics. My success started to ruffle feathers. Rumors surfaced about me moving too fast or overstepping boundaries. One day, I overheard two colleagues debating my ambition in the break room. "She's smart, but does she really have what it takes to survive here?" one whispered. "She's too focused on revenge, I bet. That never ends well," the other replied. Revenge, that made me smirk, if only they knew. During those tough times, I clung to a mantra I repeated to myself: let your work speak louder than their doubts. And slowly it did. Campaigns I led outperformed projections. Clients praised my strategic thinking. I earned promotions not by asking for them, but by proving I deserved them. Still, the climb was steep, and every step came with new obstacles. Late nights became routine. I sacrificed social events, family dinners, even weekends. Friends joked that I was married to my job. Maybe I was, but this marriage was one I was ready to keep forever. One particular evening, Alex and I grabbed burgers at a local dive after a brutal day of meetings. "Marina," he said, biting into his cheeseburger, "you ever think about just slowing down? Maybe enjoy life a bit?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Not yet, there's too much to prove, and besides, the view from the top looks pretty good." He smiled, "Just don't forget to look around once in a while." I nodded, knowing he was right, but also knowing that the road ahead demanded every ounce of focus I had. My ex's new life might have seemed perfect on the surface, but mine was a work in progress, a story of grit, resilience, and quiet determination. And this was only the beginning. 8 years after that quiet breakup, I found myself sitting in a glass-walled boardroom at Titan Corp, the parent company overseeing a sprawling network of subsidiaries, including Meridian Media, the very company run by Allison, Jake's new wife. The irony wasn't lost on me. Life has a way of scripting stories with a wicked sense of humor. I glanced around the room. Polished executives in tailored suits exchanged glances and murmurs. I was here not just as an employee but as the newly appointed strategy director, responsible for steering the entire corporation's future. From the outside, it might have looked like a typical corporate milestone, but for me, it was personal. Quiet, calculated, but personal. The moment I walked into Titan Corp's headquarters, the stakes shifted. This wasn't just about marketing strategies or campaign launches anymore. It was about power, control, and the subtle chess game that unfolded behind boardroom doors. Allison and I had crossed paths professionally before, but this was different. Now the company she led depended directly on decisions made at my level. The pressure was immense, the expectations even higher. I wasn't here to play nice. I was here to lead, with the kind of strategic patience that only years of experience and a carefully buried past can teach you. The first major project on my plate was a company-wide digital overhaul, a plan that required cooperation between Titan Corp's leadership and Meridian Media's executives. Allison was deeply involved, as protective as ever. I could tell she didn't quite trust me yet, and honestly, why would she? From her perspective, I was an outsider, a strategist coming from the parent company with all the power to shake things up. Our first joint meeting was a delicate dance of professionalism and guarded glances. "Marina," Allison said, her tone polite but firm, "we appreciate Titan Corp's support, but Meridian has its own vision. We don't want to lose what makes us unique." I nodded, matching her seriousness. "Absolutely. The goal isn't to erase that uniqueness, but to amplify it. Growth doesn't mean losing identity, it means evolving with purpose." She gave a thin smile, but I could sense the tension lurking beneath. Our conversation was peppered with subtle challenges, unspoken questions about loyalty and control. She was testing me, and I was ready. Outside the meetings, the corporate world was no kinder. Whispers floated through the hallways, some questioning whether I had enough experience or if I was too focused on personal motivations. I learned to smile at those whispers, letting my work drown out the noise. One afternoon, Alex dropped by my office with his usual mix of sarcasm and sincerity. "So, how's it feel to be the puppet master now?" he teased. I laughed. Puppet master, more like the tightrope walker. One wrong move and the whole show collapses. He grinned, "Just don't let the strings tangle." That balance was everything. The power to influence without crushing, to lead without alienating. Every decision was a calculation. Who to trust, when to push, when to hold back. When Titan Corp proposed a restructuring plan aimed at streamlining operations across subsidiaries, including Meridian. It was a bold move, one that threatened Allison's tight grip on her company. The announcement sent ripples through both organizations. Allison sought me out for a private conversation. The tension was palpable, but her voice was steady. "Marina, I want you to know I respect your position, but this restructuring, it feels like a threat to everything I've built." I met her gaze without flinching. "I understand why you feel that way. But Titan Corp's goal is stability and growth, not control for control's sake. We need to evolve to survive." She sighed, the weight of leadership visible in her eyes. "Sometimes it feels like I'm fighting a battle on two fronts." I nodded, "And sometimes you have to choose your battles wisely." Outside of work, life continued its quiet rhythm. Late nights turned into early mornings, weekends blurred with weekdays. Friends checked in occasionally, a reminder that there was a world beyond these glass walls. But my focus remained sharp. At home, I often caught myself reflecting on how far I'd come from that woman quietly removing a name from her phone. Now, I was the one making decisions that shaped entire companies. The weight was heavy, but so was the satisfaction. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, I sat with Della over dinner. She raised her glass, smiling warmly. To Marina, she toasted, the woman who took heartbreak and built an empire. I smiled, feeling the truth in her words. Cheers to that. It was a testament to resilience, a reminder that power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, waiting for the right moment to change everything. And my moment was just beginning. The restructuring plan I championed at Titan Corp was meant to streamline operations and boost growth, but in reality, it opened a can of corporate worms. Allison's company, Meridian Media, bristled under the changes. Her protective instincts flared and the boardroom battles only intensified. It was clear. I wasn't just dealing with business challenges, I was facing a subtle war of wills. Allison's resistance wasn't personal, or so I told myself. It was about control. She had built Meridian from the ground up, poured her heart and soul into it. The idea of Titan Corp, and by extension me, pulling strings behind the scenes felt like an intrusion. I understood that better than most, but I also knew that resistance was inevitable when power shifts. The key was to navigate the politics without losing sight of the bigger picture. The whispers in Titan Corp's hallways grew louder. Some executives questioned my approach, accusing me of being too soft or too wrapped up in personal drama. The irony wasn't lost on me. After all, who better to understand the fine line between business and personal than someone who had lived it? One morning, I walked into the office to find a stack of emails flagged urgent. Among them was a message from Marcus, the COO, blunt as ever. Marina, I'm hearing concerns from the board about Meridian's pushback. We need firmer control, your diplomacy is admirable, but it's time for results. I stared at the screen, feeling the pressure tighten. Results. That word echoed in my mind like a ticking clock. That same day I had a tense meeting with Allison. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken challenges. Marina, she began, I'm not here to undermine Titan Corp, but if this restructuring threatens Meridian's culture and autonomy, I can't stand by. I met her gaze steadily. And I'm not here to stifle what you've built, but neither can I ignore the necessity of adapting. Our industries evolve, we have to, or we risk irrelevance. She folded her arms, eyes sharp. You make it sound so clinical. But businesses are people too. I smiled wryly, then let's make sure our people survive. Rumors of sabotage surfaced. A leaked proposal threatened to undermine the restructuring plan, and fingers pointed toward Meridian's executives. I had to tighten the ship and investigate, all while maintaining a fragile alliance with Allison. Late nights became the norm. I found myself in conference rooms with security teams, poring over data, trying to piece together who was undermining progress. The line between ally and adversary blurred, making trust a rare commodity. One evening, Alex swung by my office, eyebrow raised. He said, smirking, "Your peaceful revolution just turned into corporate Game of Thrones." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Tell me about it." He leaned in, voice low. "You ever think about sending a smoke signal or something, maybe a singing telegram with a warning?" I chuckled, tempting. But no, this is about strategy, not theatrics. The personal stakes kept rising, too. Jake's name occasionally surfaced in quiet conversations, usually when Allison was mentioned. I'd catch glimpses of their life through mutual contacts, the lavish events, the public smiles. It stung, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the mission. Then came a surprise invitation, an industry gala where Allison and I would be forced into the same room. I debated going, but knew skipping wasn't an option. The night of the gala, I arrived dressed sharp, blending into the sea of black ties and glittering gowns. Allison was already there, flawless in a way that made it impossible to forget why Jake had fallen for her. Our eyes met across the room. No smiles, just a cool nod. Later, Allison approached, voice low. "Marina, I know this isn't easy for either of us, but I want you to know despite everything, I want Meridian to succeed. And maybe we can find a way to work through this." I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I want that too, for both of us. It was a fragile truce, but a start. Behind the scenes, I began working on building bridges. I set up cross-company task forces, encouraged collaboration, and sought ways to empower Allison's leadership within the new structure. It wasn't easy, old habits and fears died hard. Yet, slowly, cracks in the resistance appeared. Teams started sharing data, executives found common ground, and the restructuring began to take shape not as a takeover but as an evolution. Still, every step forward felt like walking on glass. One wrong move and the fragile balance could shatter. At home, the late nights took their toll. Della checked in often, her voice a lifeline. "Don't lose yourself in this, Marina," she warned during one call. "Remember why you started." I smiled, grateful. "I haven't forgotten. This is bigger than just business. It's about taking control of my life, my future." The obstacles were many, but with every challenge, I grew more certain that the quiet strength I had cultivated over the years was exactly what this moment demanded. And just when I thought I had a handle on things, the next twist arrived, one that would change everything. Just when I thought I had the delicate balance under control, the game changed entirely, and I wasn't prepared for the move that would shift everything. It started with an innocuous email from one of Titan Corp's legal advisors, buried deep in my inbox. A confidential heads-up about a pending audit that targeted Meridian Media's finances. The audit wasn't random. It was triggered by anonymous tips alleging financial irregularities, and guess whose company was in the crosshairs? Allison's. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just corporate politics anymore, this was a full-on assault. Someone was playing dirty, and it looked like they were trying to take Meridian down. I knew I had to act fast. But I also realized that if I wanted to protect the company and, by extension, Allison, I'd have to tread carefully. Publicly, I was the parent company's strategist, the one who could tighten the screws or loosen them. Privately, I was walking a razor's edge, balancing loyalty with strategy. I called Allison. Her voice on the other end was tense but steady. "Marina, what's this about an audit?" I had no idea. "Neither did I admitted. "But whoever's behind this is serious. I want to help. We need to get ahead of this before it spirals." There was a pause. "I don't know if I can trust you." That hit harder than I expected, but I held steady. "You don't have to trust me yet, just let me do what I can." We agreed to keep the conversation discreet. In the coming days, I coordinated with Titan Corp's legal and compliance teams, pulling together documents, interviews, and financial records to prepare a defense. At the same time, I reached out to Allison, sharing updates and strategizing our response. But the tension between us was palpable. Every interaction was a mix of necessity and suspicion. One afternoon, during a tense strategy session, Allison leaned in and said, "Marina, I want to be honest. Part of me thinks this is a setup. Someone inside Meridian wants to see us fall. But I'm not sure who." Her words echoed my own fears. The internal sabotage wasn't just about resistance to restructuring anymore, this was personal. As we dug deeper, patterns emerged. A few executives with grudges, old rivalries, and ambitions were quietly feeding information to external auditors. The threat wasn't just to Meridian, it was to me as well. I called Alex for advice during a rare late-night check-in. "Looks like the plot thickens," he said, sounding amused. "More like it's a damn stew," I replied. "And I'm not sure who's stirring." "Keep your friends close, your enemies closer," he quipped. "And maybe start thinking about who's double-dipping in the gravy." The stakes had skyrocketed. This was no longer a power play, it was survival. The audit hearings were brutal. Questions were sharp, suspicions high. I watched Allison stand her ground, fierce and unyielding. It struck me then, despite everything, she was formidable. And maybe, just maybe, I respected her more than I'd admitted. Between sessions, we shared brief moments of quiet, the kind that transcended rivalry. "Marina," Allison said quietly one evening, "I never expected to rely on someone like you, but here we are." I smiled, the irony thick. Sometimes, the people you least expect become your strongest allies. The breakthrough came when we uncovered evidence pointing to one of Meridian's board members as the mastermind behind the sabotage. Confronted with the proof, he resigned in disgrace. The audit cleared Meridian of wrongdoing. The victory was bittersweet, a reminder that corporate battles aren't just fought with spreadsheets and strategies, but with resilience and trust. In the aftermath, Allison and I sat down, the tension between us easing. "Maybe this is the start of something new," she said. I nodded. "Or the continuation of a complicated story." That twist, being forced into an uneasy alliance, navigating betrayal and survival together, changed everything. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about power, respect, and the unexpected bonds forged in the heat of conflict. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, I knew one thing for sure: this story was far from over. The fallout from the audit was a storm that threatened to engulf everything: my position, Allison's company, and the fragile alliance we'd begun to build. After weeks of tense negotiations and damage control, Titan Corp's board called for a decisive meeting. Rumors were swirling that the board questioned whether I was the right person to lead the strategy team through this crisis. Walking into that boardroom felt like stepping into a lion's den. The air was thick with expectation and judgment. Marcus, the COO, opened the meeting with a steely glance. "Marina, the audit has shaken confidence. The board is concerned about the level of disruption in our subsidiaries and the risks involved in your restructuring approach." I held my ground, steady and calm. The disruption was necessary to root out corruption and protect Meridian's future. Without these changes, the company would have faced far worse consequences. A senior board member, Linda, interjected, "But at what cost? Morale is low. There's talk of resistance growing stronger. We need results, and soon." Their questions weren't just about business metrics. They questioned my judgment, my leadership, even my motives. The whispers about my personal history, my past heartbreak, felt louder in this room. I was no longer just a strategist, I was a symbol, a target. I took a deep breath, knowing this was the defining moment. "Leadership isn't about avoiding challenges," I said firmly. "It's about facing them head-on, making tough decisions, and staying true to the vision. I believe in the path we've set, and I'm committed to seeing it through." There was silence. Then Marcus nodded slowly. "Very well, but know this, the board will be watching closely. The next quarter's performance will determine if this strategy succeeds." As the meeting ended, I felt the weight of their expectations settle on my shoulders. The crisis was no longer abstract, it was real, immediate, and personal. Failure wasn't an option. Walking out, I caught a glimpse of Allison in the hallway. Our eyes met briefly, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. We were on the same battlefield, and the fight was far from over. That day, I realized the true cost of power, not just the victories, but the constant pressure, the scrutiny, and the loneliness. But I was ready. Because sometimes the hardest moments define who you are and who you're meant to become. The months that followed tested every ounce of my resolve, but slowly the tide began to turn. The restructuring started showing results. Teams once resistant began collaborating, projects gained momentum, and profits edged upward. The board's scrutiny softened, replaced by cautious optimism. Allison and I found an unexpected rhythm, blending our strengths. I respected her fierce dedication. She appreciated my strategic patience. Together, we navigated the complexities of leadership, turning fragile truce into partnership. At Titan Corp, I championed initiatives that empowered Meridian's autonomy while aligning with the larger corporate vision. It wasn't about control anymore, it was about mutual growth. The victories were quiet but profound. One afternoon, Allison stopped by my office, a rare smile softening her usual guarded demeanor. "Marina, I'm glad we found a way to make this work, not just for the companies but for us." I smiled back. "It's more than business now. It's about respect and trust." That moment was a quiet triumph, not just of strategy, but of resilience and grace. I had taken the heartbreak that once threatened to define me and transformed it into a foundation for strength. The power wasn't in loud revenge or dramatic confrontations, it was in steady, thoughtful leadership. And that was a victory I'd cherish forever. Looking back now, it's almost surreal how far I've come from that woman quietly removing a name from her phone. Life has a strange way of twisting pain into purpose. Jake's sudden departure felt like an ending, but it was really a new beginning, one I crafted with patience, grit, and quiet determination. Today, as strategy director at Titan Corp, I hold a position of influence few could have imagined for that younger version of me. The company my ex's wife leads depends on decisions I help make every day. The irony isn't lost, and honestly, I kind of like it that way. This journey taught me that true power isn't about loud declarations or dramatic revenge. It's about control, calm, and resilience. It's about rising above betrayal and building something greater, not just for yourself but for those around you. So, to anyone who's ever been left behind or underestimated, don't rush your comeback. Sometimes the most profound victories are the quietest, and when your moment comes, make sure it's one they'll never forget.